Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So good to be here with you guys. I really love this church. I know y'all don't know me from Adam, but if half of what we is about you is true, you're pretty stinking awesome. And I just love the energy and a lot of the things you guys do. Little things that are different from a lot of churches that I think are good different. Everything from the decorations to taking the clock down to singing. It's just I love it, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad y'all are here too. We're gonna have to move pretty quick because I've got way too many slides, and I like to talk too much. I know there's no clock, and William said, that's a beautiful thing, but at the same time, we still got to eat. So, and I skip breakfast because I'm going to Stevie's, so I'm ready to go. Okay, so Honduras 2025. It is a beautiful place. The big takeaways are I want you guys to see what we do when we're there, so that you can understand in a very simple, candid kind of a sense, where does the money go? That's an important thing. The other part of it is I want it to take away with the idea that it's a really good work. There's a lot of good stuff that's happening there, so the money is well used, of course, but then also hopefully kind of plant the seed that is, if you're interested in evangelism in a international kind of a sense, there are a ton of opportunities, and we'd love for you to be a part of that, even more so if you want to when the time comes. So this picture, and I like that this is big enough. Y'all should be able to see most of this, except for there's one slide I just put too much text on it. We'll just kind of skip it. But the this is called the Valley of the Angels. It's a spot in Honduras. We spend a lot of time. It's a beautiful place for most everybody been to like the Smokies? Okay, so kind of think about from a geographic perspective, kind of think about the Smokies, but it's got a lot of the ups and downs, and it's got a lot of like winding roads because there's a couple places they blasted and cleared everything, but there's a lot when you get away from like the bigger cities, it's all mountains and valleys and hills and stuff. So you're always going up or down no matter where you go. And there's lots of winding roads like was it clothespin kind of turns or hairpin kind of turns. It's really a fun drive, but it's also kind of stressful, and it's a lot of fun. Now, as far as kind of the plants and stuff, just to kind of give you the mindset, if you kind of take the land formation of like the Smokies, but then you stick instead of like all the trees and stuff, you've got more like Florida, Alabama, Texas kind of plants. So everything there's a lot of pine stuff. There's a lot of like succulents and not cactuses per se, but kind of that sort of stuff because it's dry and it's hot and it's rough. So the plants grow that way. This is uh, this is a really really beautiful place. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. And we'll kind of get to that a little bit later. Big motivation for the lesson and for our lives in general. We talked about this in class a little bit. It's the Great Commission. Jesus tells us to go and teach and make disciples, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So when we talk about what we do when we go on a mission trip, there are an infinite number of places we can go, people that need to hear about Jesus, and ways to share Jesus. And that's a lot of what the class was about. But you also have to be kind of specific to the people you're talking to and the nature and the nation and the community and the culture. There's a lot of things to factor in, but that's why we go places, is to go places where in many ways, places that need Jesus, everywhere needs Jesus, but places that really need Jesus. But also, we pick Honduras because there's a great degree that your money goes a lot further. Oh, speaking of which, Cadman, get the little money envelope out. It's one of those top two pockets. I've done this little report like 3 times, and every time I forget to pass around my Honduran money so you can see it. So if he can find it, Kevin, just open it up and spread it out. So there's Honduran money, and just to kind of put in perspective from a financial kind of thing for those that are interested, when we talk about finances, like a dollar there has a value of about a nickel here. It's about a 1 to 20 to 1 to 25 ratio. So like I think there's like $100 bill, maybe a $200 bill in there. I mean, like a $500 bill there is like a $20 bill here, $25. Just the money exchange is so different. Now the flip side is you go get a combo at a restaurant, it's like $1,200, but it's it's very very different in how you deal with money. But even still, the money goes a lot further because the community is in so much more need. Now this is just to kind of give you some perspective. I just stole them off the internet, but that's where Honduras is at, that green one. So that's Mexico, kind of the bottom part of the Gulf there, and it's this little spot that's got ocean on both sides. There are places towards the ocean where it's really touristy and really pretty, and kind of like Florida or someplace. But when you get into the middle, it gets poverty very very quickly. When you get out of town, the poverty spikes drastically. It's about the size of Virginia, just to give you a space like a size kind of thing. It's a very small country in a lot of ways. We went into Comagua, is this kind of the northeast or northwest of that star. Comagua is where the airport is. Tegucigalpa is the capital. Now, Tegucigalpa is when you have poverty, you generally get stuck in situations where you make poor decisions to try to get out of poverty. So there's a lot of drugs and there's a lot of crime. Tegucigalpa is debatably the child trafficking capital of the world. If you've ever seen the movie Sound of Freedom, it takes place in Tegucigalpa. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It'll really fire you up to go and serve and help children and stuff. But the Tegucigalpa is where we land. Now, this next shot here, the city of Tegucigalpa and Comaguas, that's all kind of one big giant valley bowl that is two cities that have kind of merged into one. But Tegucigalpa, or Tegu, is the capital. Now, up here, the red circle, the Valley of the Angels, that's that front picture we did. We went up there a couple of times, but it's a little more touristy. It's mostly just really pretty. It's just, you can go up to the top of the mountain and see valleys, and it's gorgeous. And there's a coffee shop or two that's really good Honduran coffee. The Santa Lucia is kind of halfway between the two. Santa Lucia is where our primary church work was. We went to a couple, we've been several places. The place we were originally going to go, they couldn't, we decided not to go there because they had a big spike in crime, was the short version. So when you try to take a bunch of medicine and a bunch of food and a bunch of money to help people and things to an area that's already having a big spike in crime, it's a weird balance of saying we want to take and just give stuff away, but also we don't want to cause there to be temptation, even among the brothers and sisters in the church, of taking things that they shouldn't. It's from God and it's for everybody, but it's when you have that degree of poverty, it just becomes really challenging. So that church, we decided, we sent some stuff, and I'll show you that later. We sent some stuff to help them out, but for safety, when you got a bunch of gringos walking around, it's like, oh, you came to Honduras, which means you have money, and you're not in a visitor touristy place, which means you must have a lot of money. You're here, So people make assumptions and it can kind of get dangerous pretty quickly. So the city concept, basically, in the city, it feels like a city. The traffic is terrible. They don't have any of the infrastructure you need to get around hardly. But when you get out of the city, it very quickly becomes drastic poverty. And what we would, it's almost kind of like a caricature of poverty. Like when we think of poverty, you think, oh, well, like living in a house made of pallets and plywood. And it's like, yeah, but worse. It's that kind of thing. Like I tell my boys, I tell people all the time, the stuff that people live in a house as a house is what I would imagine. Like if you turn my boys loose on Josh's farm and said, go build a fort. And it's like, oh, there's a pallet, there's a piece of corrugated metal, and there's a tarp, and we can just build some. And like, that's a house. And then that's on the side of the road. And then they go and buy things or make things and then try to sell them on the side of the road. And it's just day-to-day, hand-to-mouth just existence. It's really, really rough. But that makes them very, very open to talking about something that is better, something that is more powerful, more beautiful, eternal. There's a lot of need, but also a lot of desire to talk about Jesus. So it's really, really well. Schedule stuff. These two slides are going to move pretty quickly. If you want more information, you can get it. But the first 3 days we went down, I go down with a small group early that's just basically like blazing the trail so that when the big group comes down, they're ready. So we spend a lot of time securing transportation, getting the hotel stuff, buying the groceries, all that kind of stuff, getting all those things ironed out so that when the rest of the group gets there, we're ready to hit the road and get to work. The work part is days 4 through 10. And again, this is a pretty abbreviated schedule, but you wake up, you have breakfast, you have a devotional, you go to work, you have lunch, you go to work, you have dinner, you go to bed, and you rinse and repeat. But it's a lot of fun. The one thing that you will kind of get tired of is the food is really good, but it's also like beans and rice and a protein. And the way you tell what meal you're on is what protein you're having. So if it's beans and rice and eggs, that's breakfast. And if it's beans and rice and chicken, that's lunch. And if it's beans and rice and ground beef, that's dinner. And that's like rinse and repeat. That's what you do. There's a couple of times you can get out and get to restaurants. They've got a thing called Pollo Landia, which is like Taco Bell and KFC had a baby, and it's delicious. But there's so much fun stuff to do there. But there's the meals are, you eat well, you eat a lot, but you're also working and hiking and marching around and doing stuff, so it's a lot of fun. But the first part of the morning, before it gets too hot, you do most of your door knocking. Door knocking is very successful. Bible studies are like almost 100%. We visit area members, we visit people that are sick and shut in, all kinds of things. And then depending on what kind of work you're doing during the day, we kind of try to do some of that before it gets too hot, because when it gets hot, it gets humid pretty quickly. And then after lunch, the only big thing is the clinic is kind of, that's afternoon is the clinic. So the heat of the day, we're doing the clinic. We'll kind of come back to that later. And then in the evening, there's a gospel meeting. So it's breakfast, door knocking and work, lunch, door knocking and work, clinic, gospel meeting, dinner, bed, every night, rinse, repeat. But it's awesome because the people are so much more interested in the gospel and they're interested in the clinic and they're there for the right reasons that you have just a wonderfully successful rate of interaction. I mean, part of it is people want to talk about Jesus, and part of it is when a big bald guy, big white bald guy shows up at your gate, it's like, I don't know what's happening, we should come inside and we should talk. So there is a part of it that is like just going is like a ticket into somebody's house because they're interested. There's also like shaved heads or bald people. That's just not a thing there. Like I was probably one of about 2 bald people that I saw, and the other one was a guy that came with us. It's just kind of a crazy thing. So our big accomplishments for the week, we got a lot of Bibles. We did the marriage retreat and the gospel meeting. We fed a bunch of kids, and that's going to be probably the hardest part to talk about, but it's one of the best parts. Bible studies with the clinic. And then started working on a building expansion. We'll kind of discuss that a little bit. And then there were baptisms. And we averaged about a baptism a day. So there were 6 baptisms in a little under 2 weeks. But there were baptisms happening interactive with work that was being done before we got there, work that was being done while we got there, and work that was kind of continued after we left. So think about our main goal is like we're just a huge shot in the arm, a big vitamin booster energy shot for this local congregation. We go there, we dump a bunch of time and money and energy and love into them, and then we leave. Because you don't want the Hondurans to get too tied to you or too tied to your money. You want them to do it because they love Jesus, and they do. But that's why you show up and just stir up the whole community, and then you leave, and then they continue to work, which is really beautiful. So Bibles first and foremost. This was one of the most fun parts. There's like one place, this store that sells Bibles, and this is in the capital. So if you think about it more like a state than a country, it kind of makes more sense. But as a country, this is one of the few places that like is a Bible store. It's the Bible store for pretty much the entire nation. So you go in and you can buy Bibles, and we bought basically everything that 3 churches needed for like, I want to say it was about $1,200 US, and that was Bibles for kids, Bibles for new converts, Bibles for men, Bibles for ladies, study Bibles, large print Bibles, because they don't have, very few people have the capacity to get large print Bibles if they need them, so they can't see because you get older and your vision goes back, kind of deal. And then we bought Bibles for some of the preachers we were working with. So more or less Bibles for anybody that would need them, and then a whole bunch of Bibles for other folks. And for $1,200 sounds like a lot, but if you were to stock 3 churches worth of Bibles, like everybody here gets a Bible, plus all the class materials, plus the preachers, plus large print, plus anything for converts and visitors, because if they come there, times 3 churches, it really goes a long way. It's crazy. Now, and that's coming off the mentality of, I don't know about you guys, maybe it's just a preacher thing, but back home I use one Bible, but I have 6. I have 6 or 7 that just kind of sit on the shelf in case I want a different version or a different colored leather or something. And they don't do that there. They have one Bible that they wear out and they take everywhere until it's falling apart, and then they keep taking it because they don't have any money to buy a new one. So that was the logic there. The marriage retreat and seminar. This is a couple of shots. So this is the one that's in Tegucigalpa, Iglesia de Cristo, just Church of Christ, and you can see they've got their times and stuff. There's so much crime and poverty. Almost everything has to be like locked up. So you'll notice there's big metal gates and big metal bars and everything. It looks like everything's kind of half crossed with a prison, but that's not to keep people in. That's to keep people out because people just take stuff and to try to sell it to make ends meet. That's the church in Tegucigalpa. This is the inside of the church building, so tile and concrete, and of course no AC or anything, just windows, which in some ways is really cool because it makes for really good evangelism because like you have these big speakers, so it's kind of like an auction. Like people just come and show up just to see like what's all the noise about, and so they'll project out into the streets and sing and all the big microphone. And so if you're even within the vicinity of the gospel, that's their version of kind of putting it on the internet. If you're even near the church building, you're going to hear Jesus, and that's a really cool thing. But that was a pretty good turnout for the gospel meeting. And then we have the classes. This is one quick point here. So these, and I'm not going to remember all the names of everybody because it just kind of comes and goes. But I do want you to notice the 3 ladies that are here. There's kind of a spectrum here on the age, and that's a beautiful thing when we talk about our ability to work, especially when we start to tie to this, like, well, what can I do? Well, I can't go to Honduras. I don't have knees anymore. I don't have, my back hurts all the time, or I can't this or that. And there's some truth to that, and I understand. But I do want us to think about there are always jobs to be done. There are kids classes to be taught. There are meals to be prepared. There are Bible studies to be done, and there's always an opportunity to serve and to work if we're looking for it. And that's a really, really cool thing. It's easy to see some of the pictures that we're going to go through and think, man, I could never do that. I'm not in shape for that. I don't have the money for that. Fill in the blank. And then there's also the reality that is, yeah, well, there's, when we're talking about God's work and the work of the kingdom, we'll find you a place to fit in. If you want to work, we'll help you work. And that works in everything from our own personal life, try to keep doing that, to our church, to the church as a whole in an evangelism perspective. So we got, a young lady that's like 21 and then an older lady that's like 71, and they're on the same mission trip, dealing with the same struggles, and it's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of good work there. The kids are also fantastic. You'll see more pictures of kids. It's beautiful. It's a lot of fun. This is Santa Lucia. So I didn't get a church shot at the front of this building because this is a church where you basically drive to the end of the road or drive as far as you can. You get out and walk, and then you find a set of steps, and you go up the steps, and then you just kind of walk into a church, and there's a church building. So there's not a really good shot of the outside. There's a few shots where you can see things, but this is the church in Santa Lucia. This was the main one that we worked with during the week. And again, pretty good turnout. They're kind of crammed in there about as tight as I can get. This is the kids. We gave away some of the stuff we gave away was like kid backpacks and stuff. So there's like a backpack with a notebook and a pencil and some different stuff. Like what we would use is like busy bags for church. There's that kind of stuff. But when you're coming from a kid or a family that has nothing or next to nothing, that's like super amazing. Like I've got my own backpack, like, and it's not worn out or pulled from a trash can. That's crazy. So they really resonate with that. And some of it for younger people, kind of like the way we treat VBS. It's in the same way Jesus sort of feeding 4,000, feeding 5,000, that kind of concept of, well, I'm going to take care of this physical need so that I can kind of get your attention, and then we're going to talk to you about Jesus. And we did that several times with the communities and the different people that are there. A lot of it is, hey, you're going to come in here for medicine, we're going to give you Jesus. You're going to come in here for food, we're going to give you Jesus. You're going to come in here for a free backpack and some shoes, we're going to give you Jesus. And that works really well because they don't see it as a trade. We think about it like, well, if you'll just come to church with us, we're going to have a potluck, we'll feed you, it's going to be so great. And they think about it like, I get to come and get free stuff and be told about Jesus. Like, it's awesome. It's like dessert for them. They don't think about it like, I guess I could talk about Jesus for an hour if it means I get free food. They think about it like, you're going to feed me and teach me. This is amazing. And they resonate that way. They teach that way. They encourage that way. They act that way. So it's very rarely that you kind of feel like they're just doing it to get the stuff, if that makes sense, which is a big challenge when you're doing benevolence. A lot of people say like, oh, well, if you'll come in here and if you'll sit through the lesson, maybe we have a Bible study, and then we'll talk about how we can help you. And they think about it like, well, you'll maybe help me and teach me Bible. Amazing. This is me teaching. This is just a shot of me preaching with the translator. This is one of the most challenging parts of preaching because I have just enough ADHD and talk just fast enough that if I have anything around my train of thought, I have to like really have a kind of a hard reset where I have to talk my way back to where I was because I lost my train of thought. And when you're doing this with international folks, when you're doing this as a translator, you have to talk like this, and it's really hard because you've got to wait for them to talk in Spanish. And it's just everything's like that. So you say, a sentence or a half a sentence, and then you wait a few seconds, and you do it again, and it's back and forth. And sometimes it's kind of fun because they'll talk for a little bit, and then every once in a while it's like, okay, I said like 2 sentences, and you said like 3 words, or it'll be the reverse, and you'll be like, I only said like Jesus loves you, and you just went on your own. But they just kind of go, and everybody who does translating is also a preacher, so there are times when they'll interject like, oh, there's a cultural thing, or there's some piece missing, or this will help make this point better for you, because I understand what you're saying in English, but that doesn't really go to Spanish right. But it's a lot of fun and very challenging. And again, that's one of the things that when we talk about excuses, it would be very easy for me to say, I don't speak enough Spanish. I shouldn't go. I should send somebody who has more Spanish knowledge, whatever. And those are legitimate arguments. But then the reality is, by that logic, then nobody goes because we've all got excuses. We've all got things that I can't go, I've got work, I can't go, I've got school, I can't go, I've got this thing. I'm not good enough, whatever. And we start sounding like Moses. God, don't send me. I'm not a good speaker. God, don't send me. I don't know. And God's like, dude, I said it was your job. Just go. And that's the kind of mentality we need to have. The marriage seminar was a really big deal because, and this is where we'll kind of transition just here to the cultural side of things. They're just like us in so many ways, and it's a beautiful thing. And we'll kind of talk about that later. They have the same struggles. They have a lot of the same problems. There's a little more of like poverty issues that maybe don't hit us as hard, but they have the same problems and temptations with laziness or drugs or alcohol or partying or sleeping around or any number of things. And they still need Jesus just like we do. They still need a Savior. They still need a church just like we do. And of all the things that are different, we're all made in the image of God. We all need Jesus. We all need a church, and that's a beautiful thing. And that's all you really need to have in common with somebody until we start that conversation. One of the tricks about the marriage conversation is culturally speaking, it's a much more challenging thing to get married because you have to have all these documents from your hometown to get permission to get married. So it becomes a difficult thing and an expensive thing to do, which then is a hindrance. And then
if you find out later on that you're in a relationship that you shouldn't be in as a Christian, there's all these new issues that are, well, where do I go, or how do I afford to separate, or how do we afford to make this right, or get married, or fix these problems? And there's a lot to unpack there. But the cool thing is there are people who want to have that conversation. There are people there who say, this is my wife of 12 years, and these are my kids, but you're saying that God says something about this is wrong. I need to fix it, and that's okay. That's a very, very powerful place when we talk about there are some things in our life where we think that they're either so ingrained in us or such a big problem, we're so deeply rooted that it's like, oh, well, I'll just have to live with it. And we need to have more of the mentality that is, whatever the problem is, if it's a problem with God, I want to fix it. And no matter how hard that problem is, I want to fix it. And that's the beauty of this relationship for these people that are here. A lot of them are there to find out, and they're going to find out there are problems with their marriage and or problem in their living arrangement, and they're going to take action. And that's a really, really cool thing. Whereas here, a lot of those things are so interwoven in our life and family culture, we just don't think twice about it. Feeding the kids, and this is one of the hard parts. I don't know if you can see this very well. So basically, there's a group of kids called trash kids, and they're called that because they're so poor that they will go to the dump and eat cardboard and drink water just to not have stomach pain. And the dump is basically like a big flat plateau where they just bring some big like flatbed trucks. They just drive trucks up this dirt road to the top of this hill, and they back up and they dump their trash and they go back anymore. And you can see in this picture, it's pretty small, but you can see these trucks full of trash. And what was really heartbreaking about it was there's just dozens of kids running around, and as the truck comes up over the hill, they swarm it. Is anybody a big fan of Goodwill? This is my best example. I'm a big Goodwill guy. So kind of imagine like when the Goodwill employee brings out the buggy of like the new stuff, and everyone just starts pulling it apart and throwing stuff in their buggy. It's kind of like that. It's literal trash. And they're kids. They're climbing onto a moving flatbed to try to get first dibs on whatever food might be the freshest or whatever stuff might be the best. And they're throwing bags off to their friends and family and other kids to try to dig through before it gets dumped and gets piled up and rolls off the side of this mountain. And we made food for them, and it was basically like a big pot of rice and a medium pot of like beans and a small pot of meat. And so we just made plates for these kids, plates of food. Now, one of the things that's really crazy. So here's a picture of kids. So this is when we kind of got out there and like made the announcement, like, hey, we've got food. Some of the kids couldn't get to leave the trash, which is mind blowing. Like they're digging through the trash, and you got a plate of relatively fresh and healthy food, and they still wouldn't leave the trash. They were so hungry, or they were so busy trying to provide, trying to find something, they couldn't be torn away. But what was really powerful about this and the resilience of children is, as soon as we got them up there, we basically said, hey, we got food, and while we make the plates, you guys are going to sit here, and we're going to Robert, who's this guy in the green, he's going to teach you about Jesus. And they sat down. I mean, kids who literally just came from digging through the trash and like flipping a switch. It was like BBS. They're singing songs about Jesus. They're laughing and giggling. They're being kids. They're being children. It's like they don't even know from our perspective. They don't even know that what they're doing is crazy dangerous. If they get if they fall off one of those, end up under a tire. They're so insanitary. They're digging. They don't think about any of that. When you get them in the right situation, they're kids, and it's a beautiful thing. And so they're teaching about Jesus, and we have this really cool little VBS and Bible study and stuff. And it's pretty common knowledge about Jesus, but there's not a lot of like the conclusive understanding of like, okay, what do I do with that? I know Jesus is a guy, and I know Jesus is somebody in the Bible, and I know Jesus is somebody that is important, but how do I connect all those dots? And that's a big part of why we go there. They have a lot of the pieces, they have a lot of the pegs in the right places, and it's our job to kind of go and connect those dots for them so that they see the cross. And that's why when you have baptisms and Bible studies like that, when you have Bible studies, you end up with baptisms because they understand, oh, well, I know all these pieces, I've heard all that before, but I didn't know that I needed to put them in order. I didn't know that I needed to do something about that or change something. There's an eagerness to do God's will. There's an eagerness to follow Jesus, but there's also just a kind of a lack of knowledge, a lack of experience that we can take, and that's a beautiful thing. But again, kind of the way we might say even the poorest among us are crazy wealthy there. We can say the same thing in a biblical knowledge perspective as well. That even the most, even the newest Christians here are way, way capable of teaching there. That's a real cool thing. So this is some of the kids, and there's a couple of parents that came with them, but I mean, you can see there's these like Funyun looking things. There's rice and there's beef, and there's just like a small plate of food. It wouldn't even be enough for Cadman would be asking for seconds. It's like that kind of logic. And there's these dogs. There's dogs everywhere. If you're a dog person, everywhere there's dogs, and they're just so pitiful looking. Like half the dogs you want to take back home and love and take care of and feed, and the other half you just need to put down because how they're just so emaciated, so riddled with worms and stuff. So there's a lot of parasites, and then all that stuff bleeds into well, the dogs are in the trash too, so whatever on them is down in the trash, and then the kids are in the trash after the dogs, and it all runs together. So when we get to the medicine side, a lot of what we do from a medicine side is basic vitamins because they're just so short-handed on basic vitamin stuff and dewormers and pesticides. Pesticides, not the right word. What's the word for pest medicine? Dewormers and antibiotics. No, they do antibiotics. There's like deworm pesticides. I feel like something you put on a crop, not something you eat. So there's a word for like when you have a pest in your body, you need to get it out. But anyhow, one of the saddest things was this little girl in purple. She would not eat, and this was a story for a lot of the kids, and that's why they're here. But she just wouldn't eat. And we're like, look, we know you're hungry. You were digging in trash. You should eat. It's okay. And it's like, no, I can't eat. And it's like, no, you need to eat. And ultimately, we find out like she's got family back home that she's taking the food home for. So what would a plate, like a flimsy little paper plate of like rice and stuff, she's going to take that back home and split it amongst family because they need food that badly. So that's kind of the logic of a lot of the kids is if you're not big enough to kind of go out and work, you can go out in bed or you can go out and dig through trash and find something. But everybody's in charge of providing for everybody to try to make ends meet. It's really heartbreaking. It's just like by the time you're done with it, you just want to take all the kids home. You're just like, I don't know what it takes, but I can take you back to America and change your entire world. And as far as feeding kids, this whole section, so this is the other family from Botes. That's the place we were going to go, but we couldn't. They came down, we got them some stuff. So each of the churches, I'm pretty sure between the family and the school system, most all the kids get to eat about once a day through like school and stuff. But the churches take over the weekends, and so their church feeds like 50 to 70 kids every weekend, and so we got them some big stuff to be able to cook those kinds of portions to feed those kids. But that was a big part of the work that we did last year, and so we helped them again. Besides clinic stuff, and so imagine this is the church building that we were in, just bricks and open it. So they would come in, and right out there would be a table where they would register, they'd answer questions, to get contact information, weigh in, that kind of stuff. What are you here for? Get all the information you possibly need to follow up with somebody for future Bible studies, but also to get to the doctors. And over here, there's some doctors and nurses that would check them out give them any kind of prescription, asking a few questions, checking them. And then over here, there's a table that was all medicine. So it's like our little personal pharmacy. So you go and get checked out by the doctor, and you come over here and get whatever medicine the doctor prescribed. Most of that stuff was over the counter, but there were some medications we could give them. But a lot of it was just about information. Like if you don't know you're sick, you don't understand why this is happening. Or if you don't know you've got this parasite, you don't understand why this is happening. So a lot of these interconnected problems are just, they didn't know any better. They didn't know they were sick. They know they couldn't eat that or couldn't touch that or whatever. So getting information is super valuable from a doctor perspective because they don't have money or time to go to the doctor in general. But then there's also getting the medicine to fix the problem, or at least it's in the direction like this isn't going to fix it forever, which is one of the biggest things of going to Honduras. We can't fix the problems forever. We're only able to fix them for a few days, but we can take them to the person who does. And we talked about that earlier. I don't have to have all the answers, but I know the guy who does. That is the theme. It's like I can't feed you forever, but I can get you the bread of life. I can't put you in a new home, but I can get you a mansion over That kind of logic permeates how we interact with everybody. But they get their medicine. And then there was another table that was set up for like donations and shoes and backpacks and toys, stuff to get people kind of interested. And all the while, there are Bible studies happening. So there are all these Spanish-speaking preachers that are there are doing Bible studies with these families that are moving around. And so it's just constant Bible study and moving. It's a lot of fun. But there's that section. There's the doctor we work with. There's kind of the backpacks and shoes and everything we gave out. There's all the medicine things. And I kind of know the flow of the room there. And again, it was just a ton of fun. Everybody's just so grateful to be there. It's kind of the gist of it. Like there's you from all the American side of things. It's like you could be anywhere. You can spend money going anywhere, but you came here. That's just really cool. And then all the people that are there are just so grateful you're there. It's like a family reunion. It's like you came from America. Like you came all the way here to this little nowhere church and wanted to share Jesus. That's so cool. And they treat you that way. It's a really beautiful thing. This is a couple shots of the Bible studies that they were doing. So going on, you're going to have really high success rates Bible study because people just wanted to hear about Jesus. But then also, of course, that clinic that we did, there were Bible studies happening all around there because as you're waiting, okay, you're checked in, now sit here. Well, sitting here is Robert, and he's going to teach you about Jesus. And then he follows you and you do your doctor thing, but then while you're waiting in line for the clinic, he's going to teach you about Jesus. And it's really, really effective. Now, the building stuff we'll go through, but in a nutshell, this is a classroom for them. Just raw wood and cinder block, and everything's built on the side of a mountain or a valley or something. So their standards building, it's kind of more like, well, that hasn't fallen down yet, so let's build it that way. And that's how they do things. It's like, well, that seems to be working for now, so let's just build another one. And everything's on these concrete pillars, and you can see it's just really rough. So we demoed that. That was one of the jobs. We demoed that down to the studs and everything, ripped up all the floor, got down to the concrete pillars, and we put back metal. This is going to be the foundation for, and everything's metal and concrete if you've got the money. That's what they do. But we put down the metal to get everything set and welded it together. And the reason we did it that way was, for now, we basically ran out of time and money by building them a nice big deck. But the goal is that's going to be the foundation for maybe a church house, maybe a church expansion, classroom, different things. So there's a lot of options. When you lay the foundation, you can kind of build what's needed as you grow. And that's what that process was all about. So there's some of our Latin brothers pouring concrete. So they put down the metal, they put down more metal, and then they cover that in concrete. And it'll last a really long time. Now, baptisms, we had lots of baptisms. Just kind of give you, there's about 6, 7 pictures also, but just kind of give you the image here. Basically, when you go to get baptized, it's not unlike what we do here, but it's a little different. And so they'll take you to the baptistry, which you can see is just a big concrete trough. And they'll take you to it, and they'll sing some songs, and they'll say a prayer. And then they'll put you in the water, and they'll sing some songs, and they'll say a prayer. And then they'll baptize you, and then they'll sing some songs and say a prayer. And then they'll get out, and everybody will hug you, and you'll sing some songs and say a prayer. And it's really, really beautiful. But it's also fun for me because like when you're standing wet in front of all your new brothers and sisters in Christ, it's funny because you can kind of see on their faces even they're like, well, this is worth it, but also can I get out of the baptistry now? And so it's just a very human moment. That's like on the other side of the nation, on the other side of the world, there's still people who are like, oh, I love this, and it's really special, but also can I get out of the baptistry? It's just funny. It's like how human and how like us everybody, how we all really like each other. So that's the baptistry. And just kind of give you context, like this is behind the church building. That's their little burn top for trash. They don't have a trash can. They just burn whatever they need to. That's one of their sets of bathrooms, just concrete, concrete block building. But there's a lot of differences in what they consider baptism, not baptism, but the baptistry, and they just make it work. And that's another big theme for Honduras. So you can see here, this is kind of you've been baptized and now you're standing, we're all just singing, pray around you. And it's just like, okay, for me, that was, I don't know why it bothers me so much. I'm like, let this poor lady a towel, get her out of the back. And it wasn't like cold or anything, but it was just kind of that standing there, getting baptized is a beautiful thing. All right, so Bible things, we'll get into a few like post pictures, but this is the preachers that we work with. Some of them from Honduras, they're from Guatemala, a whole bunch of different guys from a whole bunch of different places, but they're all church Christ preachers that come. Again, that kind of shot in the arm mentality. We've got people from all of North and Central America, all over the place. We've got Kentucky, we've got St. Louis, we've got Missouri, we've got Tennessee. There's lots of different places in America that are sending people, but then all through South Central America, there are people that are traveling. This guy, Chero, the guy in yellow is kind of the main preacher, the older preacher. The guy next to him in the black is Chero. And he drove his work bus. He drives a bus for work, and he drove it across like 3 countries to get there, so that we would have an extra bus to get people around for this gospel meeting. But that's the kind of servant mentality you see everywhere. It's the epitome of like, I've got it here, you can use it, you can have it. No questions, no worries, no bring it back, no nothing. Just for the glory of God, make it happen. Now, other stuff. This is going on the flight down there and on the flight back. We have Bible studies on the plane. I mean, you wear Jesus t-shirt, and people ask you questions. You're a big dark white guy flying to Honduras with a Bible shirt on. What's going on? Like, what are you doing? And then you just talk, and it's beautiful. And there are people have Bible studies. And this is the incorporating wherever you are. But like, there's a little lady next to you that's kind of nervous about flying on a plane. Little old lady, because a lot of people that travel are like elderly people going to get medical help and things like that, or visiting family in other places. And they've flown once in their life. They're gonna go back and ride a donkey to their house kind of logic. They're a little shed, but they're on a plane right now, terrified out of their minds. You said pray with them. Like, hey, no, you're nervous. I didn't speak the language. People can tell when you care, even when you speak the same language. You don't have to understand the words. No, they're praying about me. They're caring about me. They love me. And when we talk about the fields being white for harvest, that is exactly what's going on there. We couldn't even get on the plane before we had Bible studies there and back. There's another kind of freedom. This is a guard tower. You think with the way stuff is built and set up, you think there's like prisons and military stuff. And this guy, he's kind of in the shadow of the building. He's giving me a big cheese thumbs up, and then the guy in the guard tower. This is just a Walmart parking lot. This is the same parking lot. It's not anything special. That's the buggy return place. I mean, it's just, but you have armed guards because that's the nature of their culture and their community. That there's so much poverty and so much crime. You just have to, like everywhere, a gas station will have a man outside the shotgun, and their job is to stand there. It's that kind of logic. That's it. They check you when you come in, they check you when you go out. Now, being a white person, they don't kind of scream as much because like, okay, you wouldn't be here to do that money, you're probably fine. But there are a lot of people who haven't eaten in a few days, and they're just gonna run there and throw down whatever they can, just get some calories, because they can't have back once in the stomach. That's the logic there. I mean, it's the poverty is hard to comprehend. On a lighter note, they do have cyber trucks. They're not quite as big as ours, but they're getting there. This is one of our friends' trucks, but I mean, this is how they take care of the nice stuff. Like he unwrapped it. He didn't have a accordion on garages, but you could buy a couple of tarps, and that's how you keep things nice. And they take care of their stuff. There's pieces of their culture that are like run it into the ground, duct tape it, make it work, just make it work as long as you can. But then there's also parts where you have things that they care about, like their Bibles, like their equipment, like their trucks and tools, where they do really take care of it because they can't just go buy another one. If I burn this drill up on this job, well, that's annoying. Throw it in the trash and go to Lowe's, get another one. If they burn up a drill, that's their livelihood. And they treat things accordingly. Just driving to go door knocking, they've got cows on the road. You can't see them here, but we're driving through a couple of cowboys. So there's a couple cow behind us. We're driving between 2 guys on horses, and then a few cattle ahead of us, just going on the road. Just cultural differences. for all OCD friends, this is their electric, internet, telephone, everything. This is their infrastructure. And again, this is where like, they just keep stacking on top. Wherever, you know, like this works okay. Well, now this new thing happened, just stack on top. Well, that's not working. Okay, this new thing happens, stack on. They just keep stacking until something breaks and then they fix it, then they rebuild it. And then lastly, this is Max, from a few hundred feet or whatever. It's just really pretty at night. That's kind of cool. And this is what your wife and kids look like when you've been gone for 10 days. So, or whatever it was. This was like the day before. It was like, please come home. We miss you. There's so much more to be said. There's a lot of really beautiful things that are happening in Honduras. I'm trying to get this back up. Let's see if I can find. This is our slideshow we need for the song. There's a lot of good work that's happening there and a lot of fun that's happening there. But also, there's a lot of good work that's happening here that opens the doors for us to get there. They're just like us. They have the same kind of struggles. They have the same kind of sin problems. They need Jesus the same way we do. And if, at the very least, I want you to take away a really encouraging, really good feeling that is thousands of miles away, there's a church that's meeting this morning that loves Jesus the way you do, that worships Jesus the way you do, that wants to go to heaven, and for all practical purposes will be in heaven. And you're helping to make that happen. There's going to be, you know, Paula and Claudia are going to come to you, and you're not going to know them from Adam. They're going to say, oh, you were from Sugar Grove. That helped Andrew come, and that helped this happen, and that helped that happen. That's the beauty of the church. People in heaven that you never met, will never meet, and they're going to be in heaven because of things we're doing here. Let that be a super, super encouraging thought for you. Also, if you want to be more involved or want to grow, I hope part of this is showing us there's a lot of different work to be done in a lot of different places. And some of that can be in your back door, your backyard, your neighborhood, your place of work, your school. But some of that can be if you want to go to places. There are a lot of places that would love to have you. There's, generally speaking, more generosity in sending people than there are people to be sent. So if you want to help more in any way, there's always opportunities. This is a church that loves people, loves the church, loves Jesus, and knows how important it is to have a relationship with Jesus. If you are not in a relationship with Jesus, or you don't have a relationship that you want to have, Jesus didn't send, or God didn't send his only begotten son. Jesus did on the cross so that you could think about it, worry about it, stress about it. He gave us so that we could have life and life more abundant. He gave us his son so that we could have the forgiveness of our sins and a relationship with him. And he gave himself so we could have hope of going to heaven. If you have any questions about any of those things, this church is here to help. We love you. We're glad you're here. Come forward now. Just stand and sing.
What a wonderful, wonderful
Day I will never forget. Darkness away. My Savior I met. Oh, what a wonder, compassionate friend. He met the needs of my